back for round 2 of this week's Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, Eric Donovan, and we're going to show some more races. Look like horses at outside trips.
Yep, and we're going to show a race that is similar to the ones that we looked at in the first segment here, and this is the 7th race from the 21st, a claiming race, 10,000 the tags here, 6 furlongs distance. Looking at the 4, BD's Phoenix, who's going to get like an outside chasing trip on this track, which is totally against the way the styles have been winning of the horses that have been winning.
Yeah, and also he was roughed up a little bit at the start, getting steadied out a little bit, and he already ends up finding himself a matter of about 5-6 lengths off the lead and back all the way in last, way out of position behind horses, and he makes a really long, sustained outside run in this race.
And the horses that are going to finish 1-2 here are the 9 Doc Can Do, who's taking advantage of the bias, as is the 8 Night in Tunisia. Both horses saving ground, and you see the 4 BD's Phoenix steadily advancing down the backstretch in those yellow and blue silks, and moving up about 3 wide at this point, but it's going to be forced a little bit wider as they make their way around the turn to the top of the stretch.
He has an absolutely impossible trip in this race, as we've shown. Not only compromising the start, but continuing 3, 4, 5 wide in this race around the turn. And you know, BD's Phoenix really catches my eye a little bit because he had run not a fast, but an okay sort of visually impressive win when he broke his maiden in his prior start. He was up on the pace in the race. The pace sort of collapsed in there. Battle Ready, who had trouble and finished second, closing in there, came back with a very easy win. We'll actually see it coming up a little later in this episode, looking at another horse in that race. But I think BD's Phoenix, even though he looks a little slow, ran better than he looks in breaking his maiden, and a lot better than it will look like when you look at the result chart of this race. BD's Phoenix is one, I think, right spot, similar spot, fair racetrack, make some money with him.
Absolutely, totally up against it in this spot. A horse that's young and still might have a little bit of upside, although he's in for the cheap tags here, right. 15,000 maiden, 10,000 for this start here, but certainly a horse that I think has an upside in these low-level claiming races.
Yeah, no, I agree, and he's a little bit buried because his maiden win, like we said, better than it looks, and this race clearly a lot better than it looks.
All right, let's get on to our second race of this segment, and the second race is from the 21st as well. Race number 9, the last race of the day. This is a New York-bred claimer for 3-year-olds, 15,000 the tags in here, and we're taking a look at 2 horses, the 8 Bongo Boy and the 7 Turbo Tim, who are right next to each other.
Yeah, and both of them ran well. In some way, you could say Bongo Boy, the 8, one on the outside, ran the better race because he was 4 wide around the track, and Turbo Tim was 3 wide, and he also finished 4th, Bongo Boy, and it was kind of a late clunk up, but you know what? Considering the dynamics, and once again, the way the race was run, because this race, shockingly, won in the front end by the 6 time study. Millie Rock, who chases in the outside, mostly the 2-path, he's actually in the 3-path now, actually in the 2-path, finishes second. The horse on the inside, the 4, he finishes 3rd, never leaving the rail. And of course, these horses chased on the outside the whole way.
Yeah, the way the dynamics played out here, it's a total up front, inside race flow here, and you see the 7 Turbo Tim and the 8 is Bongo Boy moving still right next to each other. They're about 3 and 4 wide on the turn here. Now, I think in the stretch, it's going to be the number 7, Turbo Tim, who has more trouble. Turbo Tim's going to get blocked in behind horses. We're going to highlight them once again here just to show you where they are, Turbo Tim and Bongo Boy.
Yeah, and also, this is another case where I think about this. I feel like Turbo Tim was a little bit encumbered by the fact that Bongo Boy is on his flank the entire way. And you can see right there, wants to get to the outside and make a move, but he just can't because he's being kept in by Bongo Boy. And so he's forced staying in the 3-path, tries to go between horses and encounters real traffic in the stretch, and we'll show the head-on. Bongo Boy has the clear outside path, and that may have helped him. And for that reason, Turbo Tim's going to be the bigger price next time, and I'm a little interested in him. And there he is behind horse, and it's a little hard to see. First of all, it's going to get kind of dark because this was the last race of the day. But Turbo Tim, he's buried in traffic.
Yeah, he's got 3 horses in front of him. He's kind of got a little triangle going on in front of him there, just nowhere to go. He can't really go outside. He's looking for room inside, and just nothing doing at any point in the race for Turbo Tim. Now, my question for you is that he would run 2 long races before 2 route races. Turn back for this race. Do you think he's better sprinting, or do you think he's better going long?
Well, he had some wide trips in those races going long. We're not talking about a superstar here in Turbo Tim. He's going to have to run in this kind of weaker field, but he can win. I would love to get another chance with him on the turn back, going a sprint. I know he won't be turning back, obviously, because he sprinted for this race. On the other hand, I'd like to get a chance to try him in the shorter race. I hope they don't make the mistake of thinking he needs to go long. In a fairly run race with a fair trip, I think Turbo Tim can win one of these sprints.
At a good price next time.
At a very big price. So I really hope he sprints.
One more race to go, and that's the 7th race from Sunday. This is a New York-bred claimer, 15,000 the tags, 1 mile of distance here. We're going to take a look at the 4 Saratogian. I thought this horse might play out to be the speed on paper, stretching out in distance, but a heads up right here early on from Richie Migliore on the 8, Say New York Sandy, who realizes that their track is very inside and speed favoring, and Richie does his best to get this horse over the lead, and Say New York Sandy going to get to the lead, but we see the horse that we're looking at, Saratogian, settle into a good position here early on in the race.
Yeah, you know, she asked the horse early to establish position, but then wasn't that aggressive in riding after that. But she's established the inside position, but clearly the outside horse, I guess, is just a little bit faster. I don't know. In some ways, look, she held her ground and stays inside, and you can see Migliore looking over his shoulder like about 5 times to make sure he's clear, because clearly he wants to get to the rail. Well, you know what? Be a little assertive on the 4 Saratogian, like you're being here, but go on with it. Don't let the other horse go. When you're riding this rail situation, you have got to be going forward in these situations and not be passive. And I think right here kind of lets the 8 get to the front end here and get to the inside. And look, maybe a little bit more energy exertion hurts the 4 Saratogian, but all things considered, I would say the 4 should have been second in this race.
Now, this is where the race is won, because the 1 Battle Ready, being ridden by Mylan Studer, was on the rail, tips 3 wide in this spot here. She knows she has horse with Battle Ready, and she makes this big move 3 wide. But on the other hand, the 4 Saratogian's kind of getting bottled up inside with the 8 right in front of her, and also the number 10 horse, Smarter Alex, inside. And here, I think it's where the race really comes apart for the 4 Saratogian. Right here in this spot, the jock has a choice to either come outside the pace setter here, Say New York Sandy, or go inside. She elects to stay inside. Now, with the way the rail was playing, you know, I can't fault her for wanting to stay on the rail, but at some point in the stretch, you got to realize that you have to get off the rail to give your horse the best possible chance to finish the race.
I'm laughing to myself watching this, because we showed a race from last week where Indy Mine got victimized on the inside, and what's interesting is that in that race, Rosie Napravnik was riding the horse who won the race, JJ's Napravnik, and she absolutely won that race by being like the 1.5-2 path and not giving Indy Mine the inside position and not allowing him to angle out. And in this race, she's riding the horse Saratogian that gets absolutely victimized in the same way, because Richard Migliore drifts a little bit off the rail and he's race riding. This is very good riding, and the same thing she did last week, but she became the same victim in the same way she victimized somebody last week.
Absolutely. You saw the way things kind of slow to develop down inside there. I think that there was a point where she really wanted to be aggressive. She could have punched the 4 Saratogian through on the rail, but Richie does a great job keeping her pinned down inside, and really just nowhere to go inside through the stretch here for Saratogian. And I think it all comes down to the top of the stretch where she had a chance to go outside, instead stayed inside and ran into the traffic problem.
Right. You know, look, we're not trying to be overly critical. Race riding comes down to a lot of split-second decisions, and a lot of results hinge on the riders making the right split-second decisions. And I think they're the first ones who are going to say, that's what happens, and sometimes you make the wrong decision. And I think what happens, and this is one of the dangers of when you get this strong rail, the riders become overly obsessed by staying on the rail. And I'm all for that, and I don't blame them for that. The problem is it almost gets too much in your head, and then a mistake like that gets made, because the truth is Rosie Napravnik has rode terrifically here the entire winter, and this was an error in judgment. I think it's because of the way the racetrack was playing, and that's one of the problems that happens in these races, and that's why they're hard for us to bet on, and they're sometimes hard for the riders to ride.
I think Saratogian next time out is a horse that has enough speed to get the lead if the track's favoring speed, or even the usual in a track where it's not a bad thing to be on the lead here. And certainly had her chances compromised through the stretch. I think should have been second by a long distance in that race.
Should have been second in there. My problem is I just don't know how much upside he has. He gets one more chance from me. It will be his 3rd start off the trainer change.
All right, that does it for this segment of Trips and Traps.
Yeah, and we thank you for watching, of course. And as once again we always say, we have that email address, tripsandtraps@nairainc.com. Keep the emails coming. Love to hear from you. Try to watch the races. Include some. You know, got a couple of suggestions for races on horses that got left, but ultimately we decided we just wanted to focus on pretty much outside trips.
Yeah, that came in key this week with the way the track was playing, for sure.
Just thought it was the best thing we could do, and use those trips and watch the races very carefully when there's a real bias.